All right. Hello and welcome everyone to this Umbraco Heartcore webinar, product webinar as we call it. Today we're going to talk about all things Umbraco Heartcore. We'll both look at what is presently going on, what happened in the last couple of months, and then also have a look into the future and see what's coming up on the roadmap. Together with me to talk about Umbraco Heartcore and all the exciting things coming up, I have a couple of my wonderful colleagues. First off, Morten, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Morten. I'm the lead for the Heartcore product team. I don't know how short we want to keep it.
That's nice and precise.
That's short.
And yeah. Mike?
Yes, my name is Mike Peterson, and I am partner manager for the UK market. So it's mainly all the commercial discussions and questions.
Very nice. And my name is Rune, by the way. I am product communications producer at Umbraco. And let's just kick it off. So one of the reasons we're doing the webinar is a couple of weeks back, we published a blog post, a hardcore update, and it pretty much covers the last couple of, or the first part of 2022, where a lot of things has been going on. And so we thought it might be a good idea to sit down and have a chat about all of these things coming up. Before we do that, though, it might be a good idea to just take a step back and kind of explain what is Umbraco Heartcore. Actually, some of you might know, but for those of you that don't, Umbraco Heartcore is a headless version of Umbraco CMS. That's kind of the very basics of it. So it's built on the open source CMS version, but then targeted specifically for headless development. So it has all of the bells and whistles of a headless CMS. It has a managed API layer, and then coupled with the awesome content management capabilities of Umbraco. Now, this includes things like GraphQL. There's a preview API. Umbraco Forms is included as well, so you can actually create forms in the back office and use that with a headless approach. So there's a ton of really great features in there, but we'll dive into some of those a bit later on in the webinar. Now, one of the things we've been talking about is who is headless targeted at. And Mike, you have some insight on this as you've been talking to a lot of our partners and clients and so forth. So who are interested in headless and who should be interested in headless?
Yes, and as you say, Rune, one of the reasons that we have this is a result of us speeding up on hardcore. And why do we speed up on delivering even more features? Is because we are seeing an increased demand from agencies and also customers. I see more and more proposals in the market include a headless architecture setup. We see bigger trends and buzzwords like changing from a monolithic approach to a composable DXP, or building in a headless or microservice architecture. And that's definitely also what I hear in where I manage, or where I speak to agencies in the UK market. But really, nothing has changed in the way we work. The strategy has historically been positioning Umbraco as a best-of-breed technology. Some would say maybe the best CMS in the world. But the main change you've seen over the last 6 months is how we position Umbraco, and that's mainly to stay relevant to the marketeers. They would say or search for composable DXP, say we need a DXP or composable DXP, which is just basically a mix of integrated best-of-breed technologies. And Umbraco, especially hardcore, fits perfectly as the key component to a setup that manages the content. So with hardcore, you get everything out of the box, and that's really something that ties into some of the other trends or challenges that I've seen. Because you get everything out of the box, you don't need to spend resources on the infrastructure. You have to maintain the APIs. You get it all managed out of the box from hardcore. And one of the main challenges is developer shortage, or finding enough resources like developers. So I've seen agencies, especially in the UK, starting to use Umbraco Heartcore to be able to utilize more front-end devs. on React, Vue, Angular, because strategically this can also help balance the workload that you right now might be experiencing on backend devs. So so it's something that aligns very well with the marketeer strategy, but also something that can help agencies with a main challenge. And as I always say, it's not an either or. Umbraco Heartcore. When you go in and spin up a project in the cloud portal, you'll see that you can either choose Umbraco Cloud or Umbraco Heartcore. And that's really what Heartcore does. Is it widens your delivery possibilities. One of the more recent wins is a big bank where in the tender they had React as the preferred front end, and that's mainly it. We see customers also having a preference for front end or having a requirement of building in a headless way. So having Heartcore as part of the toolbox means that you can now be relevant and deliver to those types of customers as well. And if you want to see more in depth there, I know we have a big event coming up in a couple of months, Code Garden. I know there's a lot of different, there's a DXP track, there's a lot of headless talks, but especially also, for example, there's one talk from Andy from Tangent about Umbraco Heartcore and Jamstack, and a case study on UK Power Networks, which I find really interesting because what we are seeing is also a different audience towards Umbraco, with more front-end devs getting involved as well. So that's that.
I think your point about it being a end client requirement to have a headless offering is really important. And that we have Heartcore on the shelf just means that you have the opportunity to go fully headless if that is needed for a project, right?
One of the important things is it's not that it hasn't been possible to deliver to a project that requires it being headless, but it also required the agency to kind of build and maintain it on their own. Whereas Heartcore, it enables everyone to be able to be involved because you press the button and you get access to everything without having to spend all the resources on building it up and maintaining it. And that's really what I see the big strength of Heartcore is that it enables a lot of different people to deliver on customer demands.
Yeah, definitely. Very nice. Just before we move on, I'd like to mention that there's both a Q&A feature available and also a chat. And if you have any questions at all during the session, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. Right, before we dive into actual features, Morten, could you talk a little bit about where we are on the development side of things? I think we mentioned the blog post as well that we've started up a new team focused on Heartcore.
Yeah, that's true. So if, I don't know, for all of the people who are participating and watching this webinar, depending on how much you follow the blogs and read along and follow the journey of Umbraco Cloud, I can mention that we spent a better part of last year creating a modern platform for our entire cloud offering. So a lot of time was spent on that. Then as we got into 2022, we established a dedicated Heartcore team with a new platform in place for running our entire cloud offering on. We established a dedicated Heartcore team, product team, focusing entirely on Umbraco Heartcore and delivering features and improving both the APIs, the product as a whole, the experience that you get in the back office, especially working with the APIs and making sure that everything's performant and nice to work with. So we started with that in January with some new hires to Umbraco. So quite excited about that. Nice to get started.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that also allows us to focus even more on gathering feedback, addressing reported issues and things like that. How do you actually go about that?
Yeah, so we've traditionally we've had one issue tracker on GitHub. So under github.com/Umbraco, we had one issue tracker for all of Umbraco Cloud. So we now have divided that into two different ones. So we have one for cloud and we have one for hardcore. So if you should run into issues or if you have feature requests, you can use the issue tracker on GitHub to submit your feature requests or ask questions. We also have some client libraries on our GitHub account, which are also open source, but they're also maintained and supported by us. So if you have questions for those, you can also ask in the tracker for those specific projects. But otherwise, we have a dedicated hardcore tracker. So go into GitHub under /Umbraco and then search for hardcore, and then you'll find it.
Yeah, and you're of course also welcome to reach out in the chat in the Umbraco Cloud portal, and our support staff will be ready to help you there as well, point you in the right direction at least. I know we also have some exciting news coming up in the next couple of weeks regarding future development on hardcore. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So we are establishing a headless community team. So we've had quite successful community teams in various aspects of Umbraco in the past. So we had a unicore team who helped bring Umbraco, the open source CMS, up to use .NET Core. We have a docs team who help create documentation. We have a package team who help with various different things related to packages, making it easy to work with packages. And so you'll see now that we are creating two new community teams. One which for the CMS, which I'm not sure if that was actually announced already on the blog, or if
it was published today. Yeah,
it was published today. Okay, so similar to that, and we didn't want to publish both of them in the same day. that would be a bit confusing. So the CMS one is published today, and then a couple of weeks from now we'll publish or open up for applications for a headless community team. This type of community team will be a bit different from the other community teams we've had in the past, or still have. So this headless community team will be more of an advisory team. So the idea being that we have many different types of people taking part in this community team and meeting up at least 4 times a year to talk about what's moving, what's missing in the headless space. Of course, it will be centered around Umbraco Heartcore, but it won't only be restricted to hardcore. So we'll also talk about headless in general and what it means to the open source CMS in general. But it will be centered around hardcore. And we'll talk about some of the alignments that we're doing with the CMS. And it's really it's open for everyone. It's not only for developers. Of course, it would be great to get developers who work with headless technologies in one way or another, and not tied to any specific technology. It can be .NET, it can be front-end stacks, JavaScript, Node, anything really. And we hope to get also people from agencies or from end clients who work with headless or sell headless to their customers, to really get an all-round picture of what it is that the users of a headless CMS offering like Hardcore would like to see part of the offering. Either if it's missing, something that needs to change, something they'd like to see done differently, all types of things like that. But we'll elaborate on that in a blog post, which will be published around 2 weeks from now. And I think we'll send it out to everyone who's participating in this webinar as well. So you get a heads up when the blog post is ready and when the applications are ready.
And I think it's actually really exciting with these two new teams, as you mentioned. They're more kind of an advisory effort, you could say, both for the CMS and for Hardcore. And the idea that we can get a multitude of different backgrounds and positions, get their input on it, everything from people who work in sales to everything, editors. I think that's really exciting, because that's historically something that has been a little bit harder to tap into. Like we still have the issue tracker, we have the RFC process, we have the forums, we have all of these things where we have a really good connection with the Umbraco community and with developers. So it's kind of an effort to open things up, right?
Yeah. And that is one of our core values, or maybe two of our core values, is being open and transparent. So that's something that we go to great length to improve on and elaborate on. So we really hope to see a lot of people, a lot of different people, diverse group of people apply for being part of this headless community team. And really, we welcome everyone to participate. But of course, there will be a limit to how many we can have in one community team. But it's important that we get a good mix of different types of people in there to gather feedback, because we really want to hear about how you use headless CMS in whatever scenario that you use it in.
And personally, I would like to.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, personally, I would love to see some more commercial people involved here, because it's also about what does the customer want and how do they want it positioned. So it's getting that feedback is something I think is extremely valuable to the whole mix. Yeah.
Right. Let's actually dive into to hardcore. See, we'll start out with what has happened recently, because quite a lot of things actually have. Morten, I hope you can elaborate on the first column here. What are the new features we've seen in Q1?
So I just want to say that I saw a question pop up in the chat, but I think we can get back to that after this.
Yeah, definitely. Keep them coming. We'll get
expand on that at least. So I saw the question, but we'll just go through this and then we can get back to the questions. So for Q1 of this year, we started out with focusing on the infrastructure, and that's the infrastructure that we refer to as our content delivery platform. So that's what's powering our APIs and what makes it available, which makes it fast and reliable. So we started out by making some improvements there for mainly for stability, but also in terms of improving caching. We still have some work to do, and we actually have a scheduled maintenance coming up tomorrow, which will continue on this as well in improving the platform, and that's around the caching that happens in the platform. We've done a bunch of different improvements around GraphQL. So in the beginning of the year, we worked with a couple of different partners and got some more insights into how they were using GraphQL, which enabled us to do some improvements in processing the queries that are coming in. So that was quite nice to get done. And it's always nice to have an opportunity to work with partners to improve on these areas. Then we've worked on single sign-on. So if you're using Umbraco Cloud today, you're probably already using Umbraco ID for your regular Umbraco Cloud projects, or when you're logging into the cloud portal. We've added that to Hardcore as well. So we started out by adding it to new projects that are created. And then over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll start rolling it out to existing projects. And this is a really nice addition of being able to log in once, and then you're logged into to all of your websites and the portal.
A huge time saver, I would say, and frustration saver.
Yeah, especially if you work on either on multiple environments or on multiple projects.
And this works. This is the same user both for normal CMS projects and hardcore projects on cloud, right?
Yeah. So it's nice. The same thing, and it's also something that will enable us to do two-factor authentication. But more on that later. Then we have enabled content notifications in the back office. a feature which is part of the open source Umbraco version and regular Umbraco Cloud if you configure SMTP server. And that's something that we didn't have in Hardcore initially. But we've integrated this now so that you can subscribe to content notifications through the back office. So if your editors want to be notified about content being saved or being published for specific sections or for the entire content tree, this is something that you can now use in Hardcore as well.
Nice.
And then we've added a couple of new property editors since it's not possible to install packages in Umbraco Heartcore. We've heard a lot of feedback around stuff that was missing or stuff that should really be added as part of the package for Hardcore until we get the opportunity to use or create custom editors in the back office. Yeah. So we've added 2 new property editors to start with. One which is Contentment, so a package that's been built by Lee Kelleher from the Umbraco community, which is a really nice editor which enables a lot of different scenarios. The parts that we were drawn to were the ones where you can actually select values from a JSON feed or an XML feed.
I think you actually have a demo of this, right?
Yeah, so we jump to the next slide and we can see, and that should have said Contentment. That's me. If you go to the next one, then we can dive into it and see how you can.
Yeah, well, it is a content property editor, right?
Yeah. So the idea here being that if you have a data source that's external to Hardcore, that you can actually utilize it within the back office. So here we have a list of Star Wars movies, this one is available on GitHub, which we can point to. So this is the feed. What it looks like, it's a list of movies. This could be a list of products, recommendations, whatever you can think of. Here we are then selecting what we should be able to select, so to say, and what values should be saved in the property editor. So you can see the preview of what it would look like in the content section and the data that's available to it, and what the JSON looks like as well. So you can see here I've just selected the title as both the name and the value. So that's what would be saved in the content section. So if you then go to content and then scroll down to where I've added the new property editor, I can select a couple of Star Wars movies here and then save and publish. And now I actually have that available to me in both the REST API and in the GraphQL API. So here we go to the GraphQL playground, and then I have a query that's just querying all text pages and then getting the Star Wars property. So you can see there's 2 outputs here. One, I've only selected Star Wars movies on one of my text pages, and I selected the 2, and they are in an array called Star Wars, which is what I called the property on the document type.
And this editor really makes it easy and super fast to add these things, right?
Yeah. So we've had a lot of requests for being able to pull in content or data from outside, really data from the outside of Hardcore, right? And this is just such a flexible way of doing it that it was so much better to utilize something like this, which has been built by the community, instead of building our own, and we'll support it going forward. So we'll help out from our side as well. So if there's a need for anything from our side, if we can contribute back to this package, then we will do it. But I think the most important thing is that we are dedicated to providing support for this as well. And by adding it to Hardcore, we are adding support for it as well. Nice. And yeah, like a lot of flexibility in being able to choose different editors. It's not only checkbox list that's an option. You can also choose a drop-down list and a wealth of other variations over fields that you can tailor to your needs.
Yeah, and different sources as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Very nice.
so a lot of flexibility. So big ups to Lee Kelleher for allowing us to add this. It's a very nice addition, and we are quite happy to add it, and to add support for it as well. And this will be supported by us going forward.
Fantastic. And we actually have, let's see, another demo.
Yeah, then the other property editor that we added is a Google Maps editor, something that's used quite heavily in different websites. And this is where you are basically, well, you can bring your own API key to Hardcore to utilize Google Maps in your website. So this is a nice way of being able to have native Google Maps within the back office. So again, you have to bring your own Google API key as part of it, so you can host it on your own website as well. Then there's a bunch of different options for configuring it, whether it should be a roadmap or satellite. Do you want to use some of the styling that's available for Google Maps? That's also an option. Here we're just using the basic one, or let's say the more common default version of Google Maps. Yeah. So we get the map shown here, and we can go in and search. Here I'm just looking up Umbraco HQ, pinning that, and then I get the latitude and longitude. We can also choose the zoom level, save that, and again I have it available both in the REST API and in GraphQL. So here again, I'm querying all text pages. My property is called Office Map. So this is the coordinates that I will get. So on one of the text pages, I selected Umbraco HQ, and then I'll get the latitude and longitude as I selected for Umbraco HQ. And I can then use that on my website. And you can also get the key as well, so you don't need to configure that in addition to whatever you have running. So you can get that in the API request as well.
Fantastic. And we say this one is created by Arnold Visser, who now works at Umbraco HQ, but also a really, really nice package for the standard CMS, which is now included with all Hardcore installations. Super useful.
Yes.
Very nice.
Yeah, so those are the property editors that we added now, and we'll continue to look at if there's anything else which we believe is needed before custom editors are coming to Hardcore, because that is still the intention, that you will be able to create custom editors directly from within the back office to cater to more or less any need.
We've actually got kind of a sneak peek of what creating custom things in Hardcore will look like coming up quite soon, right?
Yeah. So the approach that we're taking is that we're doing custom editors for the grid first, and you might ask why that is. That's because grid editors are traditionally a bit more simple in what you do and how you use them. So it allows us to get to custom editors a bit quicker and actually figure out how it should be built. So we're starting out with custom editors for the grid. So you'll be able to build those from within the back office. And we have a sneak peek at how that will look on the next slides. But let me just go through the rest of them, then we can jump to the teaser.
Yep.
Then coming up is two-factor authentication. As I mentioned before, we're bringing Umbraco ID to Umbraco Heartcore, which means that we can add two-factor authentication to Hardcore as well. So an important feature to get added for, let's say, for the security-savvy audience. There's a lot of enterprises who will need to be able to tick this box to be able to use a headless offering like Hardcore. and Umbraco Cloud for that matter. So that's an important item for us to get added. And it will also work for the rest of the cloud. It won't only be for hardcore. So
this is one of the features where the cloud platform team and the hardcore team are working very, very closely together in order to get this working, right?
Yeah, exactly. So when we enable it, it will work both for the cloud portal, and it will work for regular Umbraco Cloud projects, for all the ones that have Umbraco ID enabled, which should be most these days.
Very nice.
Then after that, we're looking at REST API and updating that to be based around Open API. So right now our REST API is based around a standard called HAL that has served us well for many years. But we've also seen that the extra metadata that is available through HAL is not really used. And we think there's a bigger benefit in going towards Open API in terms of following an open and known standard, and also something that we can the experience from that we can kind of relay back to the open source CMS, and it will help us in regards to tooling and then being able to more easily create client libraries for other languages beyond .NET and Node.
Yeah, and I guess also just making it easier to get started with Umbraco Heartcore if you don't know it beforehand, because more people know Open API, right?
Yeah, and we think there will be a lot of benefits to how we work with the schema around the API. So that will be quite exciting to see unfold as well. Then we are getting towards custom property editors, and that's opening up broader in the back office, so not constrained to the grid, but basically being able to create any custom property editor in the back office using just JavaScript and HTML. The idea is that this will be based around web components. And we're also working with our front-end team here at Umbraco, who are building the new back office and the UI library to see how we can utilize that from within the back office of Heartcore.
That makes sense.
So you get a lot of benefits around styling, that it would be the same look and feel as the rest of Umbraco, but being able to customize and create an editor that suits your needs.
And you can focus more on logic than on presentation,
exactly. Right? Yeah. And again, this is opening up a bit broader, and we're also looking at adding different bridges, so you can call into the rest of Umbraco. So like if you're creating a content type picker, not content type, but content, you need to pick some content as part of your editor that you will be able to integrate with that. And if you need to modify a request or call out into an external service and get your data and show that in a different way in the back office, that you can do that as well through a custom property editor. So that's a bit more involved than the grid editors, but we believe that it will be pretty cool once we get to that, that you can create it directly from within the back office.
Yeah, sounds great. The last couple of ones before we dive into another look at.
So another area that we want to dive into, or I guess you could say revisit, is API keys and how you use API keys. Because right now in the Heartcore back office, when you create an API key, it's based around the user which is creating that API key. So if I, for example, myself created an API key and am an editor, that API key would have the same permissions as that editor role in the back office. So if I only have access to content and media, that API key would only have access to that. In many scenarios, that works really well, but we also see that when you're, for example, working with forms, that you often need to create a user which only have access to the form section. And then it can be a bit awkward, and that's what we want to improve by adding a lot more flexibility around API keys and basically being able to tailor the permissions that you need for that key and specifically for that API key without it being tied to a specific back office user. So,
Nice.
so that will add a lot more flexibility around authentication and authorization for headless needs. Then webhooks is also something that we want to revisit. We've heard from a few different customers that that webhooks are really great, but it would be even better if they could call a secured endpoint. So if there was a way to set an authentication header, for example, so you could call into an API, which obviously needs to be publicly available, but also secured. So that's an area that we want to explore as well later this year to provide some more flexibility for webhooks. So yeah, so that's what's coming up in Q2.
A lot of great things.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess there'll also be.
Sorry, you were saying, Rune.
Yeah, there'll also be more about these new features on CodeGuard, right?
Yes.
We'll get a closer look at some of them.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, we should be able to show. I won't say which, but some of them. CodeGuard.
Nice, but we have a teaser now.
Yes, we have a teaser, and it is kind of early days for this custom grid editor. So that's why it's screenshots for now. And let's say it's not because I broke it before this session, but so we're actually enabling it right now and have it running. We've done some internal demo sessions around it, and it's actually really nice. It is still early days, and that's why it's a teaser. But you can see here that we've added to the templating section a new folder called Grid Editors, where you can create your grid editors. And this is the view of the code. It uses the Monaco editor, which many probably know from VS Code. So here you have your HTML view, and then you have your JS view, and then a preview at the bottom where you can see what it looks like. Cool. So and then you have a configuration for that editor as well. So here it's just showing the JSON, but what we have running actually, which would have been a bit nicer to show if I had enough time to prepare it, is to show the actual editor here in the back office. But join on my session at CodeGuard. There will be more.
Another teaser.
Yes, another teaser. If you jump to the next screenshot, then we can show what it would look like from the grid perspective. So when you go in and configure the grid, allowing the editor, and here you can see I have my paragraph editor, which I can select as an editor that can be used within that grid.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah. So
oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we should address some of these questions, because this relates to what was just shown.
Yeah, sure. We can see Alison asks, are there any plans to have Umbraco Forms as a grid editor?
No, they are not currently, no.
But I mean, raise a feature request with a good description, and then it might make sense to look into it.
Yeah, we probably need to explore a bit more about what that would mean. But it's if the intention is to bring the forms editing experience within a grid, then it would probably be a bit too elaborate for it to work. But being able to select and edit a form within a grid, that could be an option.
Nice. And then Carlos asked, is it all going to be based on TypeScript? And will the backend still be AngularJS?
Well, yes and no. So they will, for all of these custom property editors, whether it's for the grid or for the rest of the back office. That there will be a separation from whatever framework is running in the back office. So we want all of these custom editors to be able to work regardless of what back office we're running, whether it's the current one, which is based on Angular, or it's a future one, which will be based on something else. So whatever we use for these custom editors will be abstracted from the back office. There will be some kind of bridge between the functionality which is available, but it won't be tied into Angular. And you won't be using Angular to create these custom editors. With regards to TypeScript, I'm actually not sure. We haven't really talked in details around that. I think the intention is to use TypeScript, but I need to double check with the team. We have some more sessions where we're going through this later this week, actually. So come Code Garden, there should be more details around this. But the intention is that you can create an editor which will continue to work and not be tied to Angular.
Nice. That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's take a look at what's coming on the horizon a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, so it's actually a mix of both of stuff that's later and that we're exploring right now. Because from the feedback that we're getting, we can see that we need to do more in regards to redirects for the content that's being created. And so in Umbraco, we have this overview with dashboard that shows if you rename a content item, for example, or move it, what the URL was before and what it is now. And we've gotten a couple of requests to be able to expose this list through an API, so you can utilize it from the website. So that's something that we're exploring right now. And so if there are more people out there who are interested in this type of thing, then please reach out or jump on the issue tracker and raise it there, because we want to make sure that we cater to all of the needs in regards to redirects, which can be a bit different in this type of headless scenario. So it's interesting to us to hear the different scenarios that you're using it in. Then another area that we're exploring is protected media. So I've talked with a couple of different customers around how they use the media section and how they would prefer to use it, as there are some scenarios where we'd ideally want to be able to protect media, which I guess often ties into utilizing it for either in more of an intranet setup or in more in different scenarios where you have compliance needs, which maybe you only give access to media to specific groups of people, or only for a limited time. So that's another area that we're exploring what we can do, and we're trying also to engage with the CMS team to see if that's something that can or should be supported natively from the CMS. But it's still early days and it's something that we're exploring. So I'd say the same thing. If this is something that's interesting to you, then please reach out and let us know.
Or come to Code Garden and have a chat.
Yeah. If you grab me at Code Garden, that's a good place to talk about these things.
Definitely. Very nice. And then I guess for the client libraries, these will kind of evolve alongside the work that's being done on the REST API.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. So once the REST API work is concluded, that's when we'll look at the client libraries. For the ones that we already have, we'll obviously need to update those so they work with API, continue to work with API. And then we'll explore what we can do. Something that we've wanted to do for a long time is being able to provide native client libraries for Android and iOS. So I hope that's something we can add once we have the next version of the REST API in place.
Very nice. And I guess the rest of the list here is open. So again, please provide feedback on the issue tracker. Join the community team when we open up for applications. As Morten also mentioned, we'll send out an email to all of the attendees as well as soon as the application's open, so you can join in there. Or if you know someone that might be a good fit for the team as well, we'd be really grateful for pinging those people. Before we sign off, we've got a few more questions. Dimitar asks, is there some specific way to use search indexing and querying, etc. with Heartcore?
Not at this point, no. Search is something that we'll get to probably in Q4 of this year. So right now it's possible to do full text search in Heartcore. We also have an endpoint for doing filtering on property values, and that's what we have right now. So more complex querying or indexing, we don't really have. You can do a lot in regards to querying with GraphQL.
Yeah, of course.
So there's that option. If you have some specific needs around searching, then I'd love to hear more, because that could help us shape the search feature, which we'll be revising later this year. But that will be towards the end of the year that we're getting to that.
Yeah. And Dimitar says they'll provide some feedback. So that sounds really good.
Yes.
Ponima, Umbraco MVP, asks if the client libraries for Android and iOS, will that be usable for or usable on MAUI projects as well? So the upcoming Microsoft mobile framework, I guess.
Yeah.
Or, front-end framework.
I believe that our .NET client library would work. So right now it's on .NET Standard 2.0, the base of the client library. We will probably change that when we get to the REST API. But I'd imagine that the .NET API would work for MAUI projects.
Yeah, and I'm betting it will work. It'll be easier than doing it with Xamarin Forms. I had quite a go at that, and that was a little bit tricky to get working, at least. So, but MAUI looks really interesting, and it's a good fit for Heartcore as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Good question.
We also had we had one question from earlier where Carlos asked if Heartcore will always be a cloud service, or no self-hosted option. And I guess to that, so Umbraco Heartcore as a product will always be a cloud offering, and will always be a cloud service. So it won't be possible to take Heartcore and host that on premise. That won't be possible. That being said, you will likely see us aligning more and more across Umbraco suite. And I won't dive too much into this now, because I think we'll talk more about it at Code Garden. It's still early days right now, but there will be a great alignment around headless throughout or across Umbraco, so that you could utilize the open source CMS in a similar way.
I like to call it the Great Reckoning.
Yeah. I would still be hesitant to say anything about GraphQL. I'm not sure if that would make it to the core, but at least in terms of headless, and when we talk about REST APIs or web APIs for content delivery or content management, I do expect us to see a greater alignment across Umbraco. So that
sounds really interesting. We have another question from Pedro, who asks, are there any plans to enable culture on form fields?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think I'd have to send that to Andy, who's the lead for Umbraco Forms.
Yeah.
I don't actually know. We can relay that to Andy to get some insights if that's something that's on his radar.
Cool. I think that covers the questions. Thanks so much, everyone, for participating. And thank you, Morten, for giving us an insight in all the very exciting things that's going on with Heartcore. It looks really good. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about it at CodeGarden myself. I hope everyone else is as well. Mike, will you sign us off from the webinar?
Yes, and of course, after this, if you're interested in exploring Umbraco Heartcore more, there's many different options. We would love to talk to you. You could either go on your own and do a trial on Heartcore, but you could also reach out to our experts here that can take you through a Heartcore demo. If you want a deep dive technical demo of how it works, we can help you with that. Or if you have any commercial questions, just reach out to your partner manager or in the team in general at suits@umbraco.com, then we can help you in more or less every question you have. So reach out, let us help you get started, and yes.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a ton of material available to get started with Heartcore as well. There's I know there's tutorials available in the back office. We also got a ton of documentation. There's the client libraries to mess around with. So there's a lot of good opportunity just for exploring Heartcore before you actually start projects up. So getting familiar with it should be really good. I think there's a sample project as well, right, Mom?
Yes. Yeah. We
Very
have
cool.
samples both for .NET and Node.
Don't hesitate to reach out to support to help get them to guide you on the chat. They can easily point you at the documentation or anything that you need to know in order to explore it. So
Definitely.
or you could come to CodeGarden and talk to us. We would love to see everyone come in and have a lot of Heartcore talks.
Yeah.
For sure. We'll send the links out by email as well to all the attendees. And once this goes up on YouTube and wherever else, we'll add them in the description as well. So it should be easy to find out where to go from here. Thanks everyone who attended the webinar. Thanks Mike and Morten, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.